How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome back to Chaos Head. So, I feel like last episode we didn't end in a great spot, but I also went a lot longer than usual. So, it's kind of, is that what it is? It looks like what we're going to see right now is a flashback for Senna. I don't know 100%, but I'm guessing it is because I think we needed... I'm guessing that they want us to have context for why she reacted so violently to the homeless man who was also apparently her father, who abandoned her and her mother when she was younger. He also, it seems to be someone who's in the know somehow. He's like kind of aware or talks about things that are going on. Like he got involved early on in what probably was Nozumi or whatever the organization ended up that was maybe preceded by them. I don't know. I guess whoever that guy is pretty integral to what we need. So hopefully he's a character we catch up with, because it seems like he knows stuff. But yeah, we'll have to just continue on with that. And other than that, yeah, we had the whole confrontation where she realized that Taku inadvertently found the formula, the scientific formula that led to whatever the developments are of the technology. Someone put out in the comment, I don't know why that was, sorry. Someone pointed out in the comment that it seems odd and very ambiguous, where they said in contrast with Sciencegate, which has a very similar, like, very fringy science, but the way they introduced the idea of the Kerr black holes and compressing information so that it could be so it could travel through, like, close to the singularity of a black hole and be sent through time. Like, there's a lot of grounding in that, and it made a lot of say, and like the explanation was there, and it kind of helped dispel the aura of disbelief. And they point out how, while yeah, the formula like E equals MC squared is a very simple formula that changes the fundamentals of how we understand the universe, or at least like it explains a lot of how the universe works. A formula like IR2 in itself, because there's no explanation of what that represents, it loses a lot of that teeth, because it just seems like a group of numbers and we're just supposed to believe, oh, it's just this key to everything. And I was like, that's fair. I hope it contextualizes it a bit more, because that is an issue where you can't, like, technically I could just spout off a collection of letters and numbers and claim it means something. So I hope that they have some like pseudo fringy science ideas behind it that they'll explain. And I'm sure they do, but we'll just have to see. Anyway, other than that, it's just really fun to see. Very scary how, I mean, we were so close to Senna. Like, she was such a nice person to us, and now to see her suddenly get so hostile was like, it's a lot for Taku. He already has trouble like trusting. And then Kozapi, like, technically tried to help us, but she also threatened like Rimi and us if like they go. So it's like, we're surrounded by all of these people who, like, in one way or another seem to kind of care about Taku, but they all seem at odds with each other. Like, literally, like, at each other's throats. Like, ISA slapped Rimi and Senna, like, crossed, like, blades. We caught Rimi actively lying to us, because she clearly knows now, like, a lot. Like, we kind of figured that, but now we've seen for ourselves. Like, I don't know how Taku's going to respond to that. All in all, it's just a lot. And then we even had the whole suspicious phone call from Nanami, our sister, where she still is talking about how she needs her hand back. And it's just, there's a lot. I don't know what to make of any of it. There's so many more questions than answers. But anyway, enough of that rambling, just kind of catching us all up on the same page here. Let's see what this flashback is probably all about, and then move on from there. But it was an experiment she had known nothing of. She was a perfectly ordinary housewife and had been blessed with a second child in her womb before turning 40. No, perhaps perfectly ordinary might not have fit her quite so well. After all, her eldest daughter was already old enough to enter high school, a 15-year gap from the second child. Oh wow, that's significant. She had been slightly worried about her eldest daughter, adolescent that she was, would oppose the pregnancy. However, the exact opposite proved to be true. Her daughter's heart sang when she heard the news. Her husband, an established scientist, often lost himself in his research and faith. Research and faith. Interesting. So he not only was caught up in the science, but he was also very much in a religion. and rarely ever came home to his family. But when he was home, he always did his best to be a good husband and father. So while she housed some dissatisfaction, she would never surpass the love she held for her husband. Her second child was delivered without issue, a healthy girl of 2,579 grams. She named the child Mana. Aww. Soon after, her husband was unfortunately made to transfer far away. Her husband had no capacity to support himself, even with the most basic of life skills, forcing her to ask her stable daughter to go with him and tend to her father's needs. Since she was now living alone with the newborn Mana, and they then opted to move to an affordable company housing as per her husband's plan. She had initially been living in an apartment with the suburbs, but this made transport inconvenient. The new company house, however, was in the best area in Shibuya, and many of her husband's colleagues' families lived close by. Her considerate husband claimed that because of this, there would be nothing to worry about in her times of need, including when she needed help with the baby. Every room in the company house was spacious, and she particularly favored the bedroom. One wall of the home was a large mirror, and the opposite wall had an even larger window. From there, she could view the luscious greenery of Yoyogi Park. Okay, I've already seen some issues here. Large mirror, and with a large window, and a large mirror, and they're supported by a company. That just screams experiments, because that screams a two-way mirror, where like she looks and sees a mirror, but on the other side there's like observers. So maybe by agreeing to the housing, they're gonna experiment on maybe the mom and the baby. She then went on to quickly befriend the housewife living close by and received extraordinary treatment from the company, namely being provided a housekeeper. She was proud of her husband for holding such an important position within his company, one that allowed her to live in such a luxurious way, and so her life without worries nor dissatisfaction continued. 2 years passed. While Mana had experienced delayed growth, she had grown into a healthy child, all while not contracting any major illnesses. She was a very pampered child. If she did not cradle Mana in her arms, the girl would start crying in a voice so shrill it could shatter even the thickest glass. Regrettably, she had fallen ill about a month prior. Particularly grave symptom was the fierce tinnitus, something she suffered from throughout most of the hours of the day. I don't like where this is going. Fortunately for her, the housekeeper and the housewife next door were more than willing to assist her with taking care of Mana. Regardless of the help she received, she was essentially joined at the hip with Mana, and she never was able to part from her for even a moment. Even when going to the bathroom, even when taking a bath. If the thought were to even cross her mind about having the housekeeper cradle the baby for a short time, Mana would detect these intentions and immediately burst into tears. Contrary to what one might surmise, she actually found endearment in how much Mana clung to her, but due to the inseparability of the two, she continued to live a life where she could never even take a single step out of her own home. Her lifestyle was entirely supported by the housekeeper and the housewife. For her, meeting the two had become her true saving grace. However, over time, something odd began to happen with the two helpers. During a friendly chat in the living room that had occurred a week prior, the housewife had spontaneously vomited without warning. Paying no heed to the confusion she showed, the housewife then rushed outside. Okay. She had not seen her since, leaving her to worry that she had perhaps fallen ill. Concerned, she decided to ask the housekeeper if she could check on her. As the housekeeper left that day, she made her request, concluding with an, "I'd love your help tomorrow as well, dear." And yet, when the housekeeper heard those words, she suddenly burst into tears and could only nod again and again as she departed. Yeah, there's something very weird going on here. The tinnitus that had been tormenting her so became fierce that night, to the point where it felt as if her head itself might split apart. She tried calling an ambulance, but the line refused to connect. She then tried going outside to ask a neighbor housewife for help, but even that proved too much for her. Throughout all this, her daughter had continued to cry incessantly, further agitating her pain. In order to endure this terrible pain, she embraced her beloved Mana. And as she did so, both the tinnitus and the crying abruptly stopped. The pain in her head vanished just as suddenly, almost as if it had never been there to begin with. She then looked down, only to see that the child she was holding was now a mummified corpse. Oh, what? In spite of how heavy it had been crying until that very moment. The body had suddenly become dissected, rotting mounds of flesh, one that gave off the most repulsive stench. And so, before she could even realize it was all an experiment, her mind broke. So, they invented a baby? That's all that was? There had once been a certain experiment. But it was an experiment that ran different to how he had hypothesized. He was there watching the whole time. He was a scientist at Nozomi Technology, a follower of the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light, the man at the center of the Nozomi Strictly Confidential Project Noah, and the man that deciphered function to the power of 10 times intelligence to the power of 40 equals IR2. He had offered his wife on the verge of childbirth as a test subject for the experiment. While that had been an instruction from the founder that he revered, it had been just as it had been just as much his own suggestion, all to ensure the success of the experiment. It was christened the Mana experiment, after the code name given to their second daughter. His eldest daughter of 15 was placed in a Cosmic Church of Divine Light institution, all while he observed his confined wife and infant child for 24 hours a day. What a... Dude, this is so messed up. Holy crap. His wife had been led to believe that the place she resided in was a company house, but in reality it was a test site that Nozomi Technology prepared, a site containing the Noah 2 prototype he was developing. Mind reading, visual projection, and control over the 5 senses. In order to research the effects of such practice, he locked his wife and daughter Mana in the site as a test subjects. Not much was known about the effects of the electromagnetic radiation on the human body, so he very much intended to halt the experiment immediately if his wife or child showed any strange abnormalities. The experiment was then met with unfortunate accident soon after it began. Mana passed away at 1 month of her age, her cause of death unknown. It was an accident nobody could have prevented. He was overcome with sorrow and attempted to bring the experiment to a close, and yet such a thing was not permitted to him. Oh, fetch. Oh, that's horrifying. Oh, that's so horrible. Those were the words of his employer. His employer was referring to the bizarre sight visible within the experiment. His wife did not seem to recognize Mana's death as real, and instead treated her remains as if they were still her child. In her eyes, Mana could never die, but in truth, these things were all simple projection, a reality only she was privy to. This was an effect of the Noah 2 prototype, and in a certain sense, the situation provided an optimal opportunity to test its capabilities. Oh no. Consequently, he had his wishes disregarded. Eventually, even he came to think of continuing the experiment would be best for his wife's sake. Looking upon the one-way mirror, his wife would embrace the corpse of their child and live her everyday in blissful happiness. She would gaze through the window toward the greenery of Yoyogi Park, but in reality the window was a mere wallpaper, the scenery a projection, and yet she simply smiled at the view, all while gently tending to her child as she cooed. Staff belonging to the research team would take care of his wife, with one playing the role of the neighbor housewife and the other the housekeeper. As long as the experiment continued, her mind would never break. As such, he told himself that it was all for his wife's sake. Though in truth, perhaps his mind had broken far beyond his wife's ever could. Yeah! I feel like you'd have to have a broken mind in order to let this play out. At some point in time, his goal had changed from completing Noah 2 to forcing his wife to continue living an endless dream. After continuing the experiment for 2 years, his employer suddenly announced the end of the project.
Data は十分取れました。Noah 2本格稼働は間近です。この実験ももう続ける意味はないでしょう。
He vehemently opposed this. His desperation evident, and yet the passion had him branded a traitor, and he was subsequently removed from the project. As a gesture of kindness, he was permitted to be present at the test site on the final day of the experiment, albeit within restraints. It's like, we're gonna let you watch. Oh, what a reward. Oh, so cool. And with him, his daughter, whom he had not seen across those full 2 years, was forced to be present. A look of bewilderment rose to her face when she noticed him. Aww. Why did they do this? Why? This is just sadistic. Why in the world would they just let her, like, this Senna, who's just, I guess at this point she's 17 now. It's been 2 years. Why would they let her see all this? Like, she's had no idea. So what? Were they just wanting to watch him suffer? Like, why?
母さんが抱いているの。一体。
He was unable to answer. His guilt over what he had done prevented him from looking his daughter in the eye. Meanwhile, the start of the ghastly ritual was drawing near. The housewife had long since become unable to endure Amanda's rotting stench, and the housekeeper had left the test site in tears in response to his wife's words. Then the equipment was stopped. The dream ended, and his wife broke. In her eyes, what was once her child had suddenly transformed into a mummy, a sight that brought her to scratch at her scalp, tear out her hair, dig her fingernails into the flesh of her face, and then began to ravenously devour the dissected body of her own child. What the fetch? Holy crap! Through every tear of flesh, she continued to laugh maniacally, banging her head against the wall. Before eventually, she took a kitchen knife, dove the blade into her own eyes, and died right where she stood. Oh yeah, just make her daughter watch that. That's so cool. So cool. The daughter cried and screamed as she watched her mother's horrific end from beyond a one-way mirror. Yeah. Alright, you know, I get it. I get why Seta decided on sight to stab him. His daughter was then taken away by 2 researchers, with one taking hold of each arm. He was not even granted the opportunity to pursue his only remaining relative.
すまないすまない
He blamed himself for everything, believing he had reaped what he himself had sowed. I mean, kinda. Regardless of his reasons, when he had resolved to continue the experiment 2 years ago, it had been obvious how things would end. Mere days after bearing witness to his wife's death, he vanished, and now Nare's soul knew of his whereabouts. Fetch me. Holy crap. That's insane. Literally, like... like... So... I know it's taboo and just stupid that we always end up comparing it to Steins Gate but it came from the same people, so hear me out on this. The organization in Steins Gate, remember? They wanted and needed access to the time machine. They got a general idea of where the time machine was going to be invented and when. So they waited for they were waiting for it, and when they finally got enough pieces, they went in to take it. They went in with agents with guns, and they were willing to utilize them to guarantee that their success. And it was horrifying. It's horrific. It was awful, evil, twisted that they did that. But at least their level of response is understandable. I mean, you're looking at the key to the future of like your entire world and existence. It'd be like if you knew where the first nuke was going to be developed, and you knew where to get exactly when you could swoop in and take it so that you could control it rather than anybody else. It would be a response that would feel measured for that. It's wrong and evil, but it's a response that would feel like understandable. This, what we just witnessed, is so sadistic. It borders on like I feel like devils would look at that and be like, a little harsh, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it feels beyond inhumane. It feels like sadistic. It feels like vengeful. I don't think there was a point in drawing it out like that, or especially forcing their like daughter, who had no part of this whatsoever, to watch that. Why? That's crazy. Okay, so now we're transitioning from after Senna leaves, because it looks like Senna's going to be talking to Kozupi about everything. So, anyway, moving on from that. Oh, what a start. After everything had settled, Senna had gone to interrogate Kozupi about something with bloodshot eyes, and then after doing that for a bit, she ran off somewhere on her own. Kozupi had chased after her, but I, meanwhile, had been just staying put, still incredibly confused as to why Senna had become so obsessive all of a sudden. And now I was trudging to Shimo Kitazawa. My parents' house is only a short distance away. Walking from my base, it took less than an hour and a half. Could Nanami be there? Interesting that Taku went with her. Where's Rimi? Like, I know she basically, like, has been revealed to have been, like, backstabbing us, essentially. Or at least lying to us. But I'm surprised she's not here. Though not as busy as Shibuya itself, the roads of Shimokizawa were fairly crowded. I was still being hit by the aftermath of the Esper debacle, namely some passerby looked at me with mocking sneers, while others even took pictures of me on their phones. Overwhelmed by embarrassment and humiliation, I hurried along the road to home.
ごめんね。
Rimi's eyes were pointed to the ground as she said that. She was walking a bit behind me, and in the time we'd spent moving along, she'd already repeated those words over 10 times.
黙ってて。ごめん。
Yeah. See, okay, this makes sense. No matter how much she apologized, I had no way of answering. I didn't know anything about Rimi. Nothing had changed ever since we'd first met. And yet, she supported me, she stayed by my side. But at the end of the day, there was still so much I didn't know about her. Even so, I always brushed that issue out of my mind. Perhaps it was because something in me knew that she wouldn't stay with me if I knew the truth. And that terrified me.
どうして僕と一緒にいてくれるの
I worked up the courage and asked her what was on my mind. I asked her the reason why she would stay with a guy like me. Was it because she was trying to lure me into a trap the entire time, just like Yua had? And yet, despite my suspicions, the answer she gave was nothing of the sort.
あなたに目覚めて欲しくないの。
Well, at least she's being honest.
普通の生活を送って欲しかった。
Didn't want me to awaken, like as a Giglomaniac? Rimi knew more about me than I did.
一体君は何者なの
私は
Rimi hesitated a little.
私はタクの友達だって思ってる。
Okay, that didn't really answer the question, though.
友達でいたいな。
In other words, she was telling me to stop pushing? But there was no way I could stop there.
僕はギガロマニアックスなの
そうとも言えるし、違うとも言える。
Which was it? Was she trying to dodge the question? No, I think she's trying to imply like that you haven't really fully embraced it. Like you have the capacity, but you haven't started that process quite yet. You're like dancing on the edge, and that's what she means, I think.
君は IR2 のこと知ってたの
聞いたことがあるだけ。
Okay. I'm grateful that Taku's finally asking freaking questions. She didn't say from who.
セナが言ってたのは本当なの
嘘だよ。
Lies? Telling me it was all lies was a lie in of itself. I could tell just from looking at her.
君は
I was about to ask more, but I held my tongue. Are you my enemy, or are you my friend? Depending on the answer, I might not have been able to stay with Rimi, so I didn't ask. If I pretended that nothing had happened, I could keep on deceiving myself just as I had been up until now. That way might be easier for me, happier even. Okay, that was what I was gonna do. I was gonna keep being ignorant and keep living a lie told by Rimi. Bro, really? Rimi had saved my butt so many times already, there's no way any harm could come to me if I did that. I deserve to live a normal life, just like she said.
ありがとう
I averted my eyes from her and swapped out my question for a few words of gratitude.
守ってくれて。
タク、
I couldn't think of anything else to say, so I just continued walking toward my parents' house in silence. Dang. Oh my gosh. My eyes were eventually met with a familiar alleyway. It was quiet and secluded a residential area. Every now and then I could hear a faint sound of a train in the distance. I'd known this specific chunk of scenery ever since I was a little kid. This is where I'd grown up. I walked to both elementary school and middle school using this alleyway. If I head through the narrow alleyway in front of me, my house would be right there. I was scared of seeing Nanami again, but I had to know for certain whether her arm was still there. I stopped and took a deep breath, calmed myself, and then, right when I was about to start walking again...
待って。
Uh-oh. Okay, now what? I turned around to see Rimi on the verge of tears.
どうしても行くの。
Go where? Home?
ねえ、行かないで。もう普通じゃいられなくなるよ。
Go where?
私そんなの嫌だな。
What was that supposed to...
帰ろう。あのコンテナハウスに帰ろう。私タクが望む限りずっと一緒にいるから。それで一緒に学校に行って大臣と3人で他愛もない話をして、帰りに立ち食い蕎麦屋さんとか CD ショップとかに寄って。
I don't like that. You know, we just saw some of the terrible things that can be twisted around your perception. What if home life is like that too? What if we got swept up into an experiment too?
そうやってこれからもやっていこうよ。
Or maybe Nanami really did lose her arm, her hand.
僕はナナミに会わなくちゃ。
いないよ、きっと。
Why was she so sure? Or was it just another lie? Would something bad happen to me if I went home?
私タクの悲しむ顔見たくない。
Oh gosh, is she actually dead? But then who did we see at school? So you say...
もう謎かけみたいなことはやめてよ。
If I'd had enough. She was telling me to stay ignorant forever? I couldn't go on like this, pretending like I knew nothing. Of course I couldn't. Each and every person I knew just kept hitting me with non-stop cryptic nonsense and never ended. I really did want to stay ignorant, I really did.
実家に行っちゃいけない理由があるなら言ってよ。こんな中途半端なのうんざりなんだ。
Sick of it? Did I have any right to say that? Wasn't I the one who always half-assed everything? Who never said what I really meant? Wasn't I the one who always ran away from everything? Yeah, I was. All the more reason to just keep doing that from now until forever. It was the time to go home. Rimi was right. I didn't need to see Nanami at all. If I was planning on checking whether she had her right hand or not, then what the hell would I do if she didn't? Wouldn't that be all my fault? Nanami would hate me, resent me. All it would have done was solidify that I was a pathetic loser that couldn't even save his own little sister. If I left everything up in the air like it was now, I wouldn't have to be loaded with guilt. So, that was what I'd do. It was the optimal choice. Don't look at anything. No matter how many mysteries come your way, ignore them. Shut yourself away from the world.
ほんと世話が焼けるな。
Aww, but Nanami's so great.
ナナがいないと何にもできないんだから。
ダメだ。
Nanami's cheerful voice popped into my head.
ダメだよ。
If I ran away now, I wouldn't be able to face Nanami for the rest of my life. I wouldn't be able to go back home for the rest of my life.
タク、
I clenched my fist and stepped forward into the narrow alleyway that led to my parents' house. It was less than 50 meters away now. At first, I just sped walked. Then I started running. Running toward the home I'd been raised in. 30 meters to go. 20 meters. 10. 0 meters. And when I looked, the house I knew... I mean, it looks like it's there. Was gone. No, wait, what?
あれ
Oh no. The name on the door plate was wrong. It wasn't Nishijo. In fact, the entire shape of the house was wrong. It was far newer and nicer than the home I'd lived in. I looked around. I wondered if I'd mistaken one of the neighboring houses for mine. But I hadn't. Actually, none of the surrounding scenery lined up with my memories. I considered that maybe I'd gotten lost or taken the wrong alley, but there's no way that could have happened. I'd recognized the entire route until now. I knew for a fact I remembered the route. But my home wasn't at the end of it. After taking the path from my memories, the scenery that should have been there hadn't appeared, and a completely unfamiliar one had instead. James Vu. What should have been a familiar place felt like it was setting foot in it for the first time.
正面ビューだ。
違うよ。
Yeah, James Vu, that's where, like, it's the opposite of deja vu, and we talked about it before. Deja vu is where you feel like you've been somewhere before, even though it's something new. James Vu is where you feel like you're experiencing something for the first time, even though you should be familiar with it. Rimi stood right behind me. She had denied my words immediately.
この世界に
In this world,
タクの帰る場所はないの。
so did we actually jump world lines then? Like, how's that work? I'm so confused. The sunset illuminated a lone corridor in the hospital. The lights were not turned on in this short period before nightfall, rendering it fairly dim. The clamor of dinner time from before had calmed, and the eerie silence descended in its place. Shogun was slowly traveling down the corridor in his wheelchair, the creaking of the wheels echoed throughout the empty hall. Many nurses passed him by, but none spoke to him, nor even so much as glanced his way. Acting as though this was perfectly normal, Shogun continued to spin the wheels with his hands, emaciated skin and bone as they were. What? When he passed in front of one of the rooms, a male patient known as Yamai called out to him. He pointed at him with his index finger, sounding a frantic cry. Oh, maybe he's got like a perception filter on where most people can't observe him or just don't acknowledge him. But that guy, he's like a little senile and he can see through it. He's like a miniature gigalomaniac maybe. Together with Yamai, the nurse had a face of complete befuddlement.
ほら、アミちゃんが帰ってきたよ。またお外に出かけてたんだ。いけないんだ。
誰もいませんよ。
The nurse looked around and looked at the man with a forced smile on her face. Despite the fact that Shogun was passing through the corridor right before her very eyes, the nurse spoke as if there was no one there at all.
また山井さんは私のことからかってるんでしょう。でも今日は騙されませんからね。
アミちゃん、ラミちゃん、
Man, how sad would it be to feel like you're just never taken seriously?
タミちゃん。
Yamai became increasingly worked up as he continued to cry out. Shogun simply ignored him, simply turned to the right at the end of the hallway. The wall, which had been cream-colored up until the very moment, suddenly changed to black. And yet, even though that wall stood right in front of him, Shogun did not halt his wheelchair. That's what I thought. It's an illusion, basically. Right before he's about to collide with it, the black wall suddenly vanished. It quite literally had vanished. All the wall disappeared. A hidden corridor appeared from beyond its past reign. Shogun continued straight through it. He traveled to another 20 meters before finally reaching the true dead end. At that dead end was a lone door in a hospital room. Shogun opened the door and headed inside. It was the phantom hospital room, the ghost story whispered about for many years, the tale of the room nobody knew of. And the person hospitalized within it, the name written upon the nameplate was... What? What? No, what? How's that work? How? What? No, what? No, wait. Takumi. Oh, this game is gonna kill me. What? So, Rimi's talked about this world, so there might be multiple worlds, maybe world lines. If there is one, and operating on similar structure, but it's not so much what we saw with Okabe, which is where his mind was jumping from version to version, but it was still just him. if we entered a different dimension somehow, and in this dimension, Takumi is in a hospital in the Shogun, or is that, well, no, we had the whole sleepwalking theory that it was Takumi sleepwalking, but that seems like a very different person, and it seems like that they're behaving and acting in different places at different times. So how's that supposed to work? That makes no sense. What the fetch? Okay. Let's move on for a little bit longer, at least. We did start the new chapter, but I'm not going to stop here, because I got a little more in me, at least. From the train windows, an indigo blue could be seen permeating the sky. The trains of the Yamanote line grew chaotic as businessmen and students alike made their way back to their homes. Two of its passengers, Kusunoki Yua and Yasuji Ban, stood shoulder to shoulder as they shook along with the commuting train, holding onto its hanging straps for stability. They were admittedly an odd pair. Perhaps due to how much they stood out, Yua had been feeling constant gazes coming from all around her. It would stand to reason that this was why she was repeatedly fidgeting with her hair and glasses. She still was not yet acquainted enough with the detective Ban to strike up a casual conversation with him. She'd only met him a few days prior, after all. Shinjuku was only a single station away from Shibuya, and yet the 3 minutes it took to reach there felt hopelessly longer than they should have. Ban simply stood, silently, gazing out the window, made no attempt to speak with Yua. Yua's current impression of Ban was that he did not seem to be a bad person, but that he was still somewhat frightening. She had met other detectives that were on the case involving her sister, but none of them had left an especially good impression. Perhaps that had left her with an unconscious prejudice against detectives by extension Ban. Or she had concluded in her introspection.
だから地下15階の番人倒せば隠しダンジョン行けるだろ常識的に考えて
Okay, I get feeling very passionate about unlocking certain endings in games and stuff, but shouting in the train feels very rude.
番人どこにいるかわからんなり
Ever since the two of them had boarded the train at Shinjuku Station, two men standing near the door had been talking in an excessively loud manner. Regardless of her desire, Yua was forced to listen to those two talking as loud as could be, all without an ounce of consideration for those around them.
マップの左端の方だよ一目でわかるだろ番人
っていうか番人と警官の区別つかないぞなもし
いやいやどう見ても番人だろどこが警官なんだよ番人は銃持ってねえよ
Oh my gosh, can you guys stop? Both of them were plain clothes, bandanas, fingerless gloves, and bulging rucksacks on their backs. Wait, bandanas, fingerless gloves, they're dressing like, almost like wannabe bikers, but they're talking about a video game. Okay. The two were a pair of so-called otakus. Oh, okay. Never mind then. They're just the really cringy ones. Yua herself was interested in and thus consumed both anime and manga, so it was not their appearance that left her surprised. She had simply never been to Akihabara before, so it was her first time seeing the stereotypical otaku, complete with the clothes and everything. Realizing her curious glances were quite rude, she quickly averted her eyes. In the seat directly in front of her, a high school girl with brown hair and a navy blue blazer was typing a message on her cell phone. Navy blue blazer. Her gaudy artificial nails tapped the screen rapidly, and every time her fingers moved, her cell phone strap of a pistol swung back and forth. Naturally, Yua had seen the contents of her message. This was not through any fault of her own, however. The girl was holding her phone horizontally, giving everyone around her free rein to see everything she wrote. It was so easy to see. In fact, it was almost as if she wanted Yua to see it. What the fetch? It's like leet speak. So like yesterday, went to Mixer with a couple of the co-op and was so boring. Guy couldn't read the room at all. So annoying too. Like, oh my god, kill yourself. Like, it's weird. It's like a combo of like, it's really probably what it was actually like. I only know like leet speak from like hearing about it, but it was like, it's this combination. It's meant to make it kind of harder to decipher. But like, it's also weird to see it being used with slang and like acronyms. So it makes it even more cryptic. Despite being a high school girl herself, Yua could not even begin to grasp the contents of the message. It was possible that it to have been Gairu speak, but to her it looked like nothing short of a coded message. All of a sudden, the voice of a child rang out through the train's interior. Startled, Yua turned toward the source of the sound. A lone boy about 5 years of age stood right beside Ban. He held a squirt gun in his hand, and muzzle pointed straight at Ban. The boy even pulled the trigger, but no water came out from the end of it. Ban gave the child a big smile. His eyes, meanwhile, told a different story. However, despite the message Ban attempted to convey, the child showed no intention of stopping.
Nobu-kun, yamenasai.
A woman, likely his mother, rushed to her son's side, turned toward Ban and politely bowed.
Suimasen. Ban! Ban! Nobu-kun, yamenasai itte.
The mother scolded her son in an attempt to make him stop, but her reprimanding never extended beyond verbal. She did not take the water gun from him, nor did she attempt to grab his hand. Yeah, that's a little... Not very helpful.
Ban! 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 Hontoni suimasen.
I mean, you can just take it from him.
Yeah, 構いませんよ.
Ban! 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 Oji-sanが困ってるでしょう、Nobu-kun.
To Yua, the scene seemed very unnatural. The mother was clearly angry at her child and showed her apologetic demeanor toward Ban, but that was the only thing normal about it.
Ban! 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 Yamenasai, okoru wa yo. Ban! Ban! Ban!
The boy remained completely indifferent and unresponsive, simply choosing to repeat the same word over and over again. Yet despite the inaction, the mother made no attempt to stop him with anything other than words.
Hontoni suimasen. Ban! Ban! Ban!
And for some reason, Ban simply stood there and let the boy do as he pleased.
Ban! Ban! Ban!
I mean, you gotta be patient. I get it. Like, it's not very great. Like, it's not showing a lot of, like... Parenting is tough, I guess, but, like... I feel like there are good middle ranges to go on. I mean, you don't have to go down the route of abuse and smacking, but you definitely can intercede and stop this kind of stuff from happening, right? In the end, the scene continued on until they arrived at Shibuya Station. Yeah, this is a long 3 minutes. I think we turned that 3 minutes into 10 minutes. Upon coming to a full stop at the station, the train doors opened, but the mother and son showed no sign that they intended to disembark. Relieved, Yua exited onto the platform along with Ban, taking a peek at his expression. She clearly saw a forced smile sitting on his face.
お急ぎ中のお客様にお知らせいたします。地下鉄番号門線。
What?
失礼しました。半蔵門線は人身事故の影響でただいま振り替え運転を行っております。
Like, it sounded like involving Ban. Weird.
お客様には大変ご迷惑をおかけして申し訳ございません。
最近よく感じるんだが。
Yeah. A crowd of people came and went through the platform. As Ban walked through along with the crowd toward the Hachiko gate, he began whispering to Yua.
まるで不特定多数の人間にストーカーされてるような気がするんだよな。
Yeah. No, I get that feeling too, honestly. This place is getting weird in Shibuya.
どういうことですか？
さっきみたいなことがよくあるって話さ。周囲の人間の何気ない行動がまるで自分への嫌がらせじゃねえかって思えてくるわけよ。
Yeah. Or, I don't know. Okay, so it makes me think of something. So, we are entering into a realm where the stage is set to where we can't trust what characters see. Inadvertently, a lot of characters may become, or already are, unreliable narrators. Their perspectives, their thoughts, their observations can be completely off kilter. We saw Senna nearly throw herself off of a roof because she saw a false vision. We have Senna's mom who cared for a corpse for 2 years. Like it's very, and we have illusionary hallways and wheelchair Takus who are not being seen by anybody but crazy people in the hospital. Like, it's very clearly setting up this idea that because of the technology that we have, we cannot trust what people see. We probably can't even trust what people are hearing either. And Ban's pointing it out, kind of saying it's weird because it feels like there's things going on around him, and it's almost like it's like being orchestrated to try and make him upset or to push him over the edge, maybe. Because you have like the rude people in the train, you have the child, and like you have no like, and the child's mom not being helpful at all. But like that whole interaction where it kept bringing to the attention the fact that like she kept like, trying to talk the child out of what he was doing. She never touched him. It's again, I hate bringing up tons of different media, but I immediately came to mind. One of my favorite shows is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's funny because it was like definitely like an older show even for me, but I had a friend who introduced it to me when I was in high school, and I really loved it. I still do, actually. I think it's a pretty solid show, a good series, good characters, well written in a lot of ways. Highly recommend it if you've never watched it. The special effects definitely are aged, but I think the narrative and the acting and the setting is pretty good. But there's a cool enemy in there called, well, it calls itself the First Evil. No one really knows if that's true, but it basically is the devil or like something similar to it, where it communicates and orchestrates like motivating people to worship it. Kind of leads like it leads a cult because it can tell them things from quote beyond the grave. Because the thing is, and like it can give all this information and it can lead people to places of power and ultimately brings about these amazing but terrible things. And its goal is to cause as much suffering and destruction and bring about the end of the world. Like that's kind of like what its whole purpose is. Like the First Evil, very, very cool as an enemy. One thing that's really interesting about it is that the First Evil can appear anywhere, and it can seem so real, and it can change shape. It doesn't have a singular shape in mind. I mean, it might have an origin shape, but you don't really learn that. The catch is it can only appear as dead people. So someone who was alive and then died, it can then take their form and their voice. So if you see it and it's talking to you, whoever it is taking the form of it can die. And that becomes this kind of thing where it pretends to be somebody whom they trust and uses that trust to lead them astray. But like in order to do that, the First Evil had to orchestrate the death of that trusted friend. And there's a whole sequence where you realize that one of the only tells of whether or not the First Evil is interfering and trying and like messing with you is the fact that because it's kind of an apparition, it can't touch you and it can't touch physical objects around it. It can walk around and look like it's interacting with stuff, but it can't like reach up and grab, I think a good example of it was a snow globe from off of a mantelpiece and like play with it in their hands like we could. It never would touch anything. And that was one of the tells that they maintained through the storyline and all the episodes, that if the First Evil was ever on screen, it never interacted with the set, ever. And I thought it was a really cool way to kind of make a tell where it would not be very obvious, but if you're paid attention, you might catch it. And that's what's making me think that a lot of these visions, it doesn't quite work because they talk about how like it can make you feel like you have sensation and be holding something that's like not actually there. Think about Nanami's hand in the box. So it wouldn't be as good of a tell, but I wonder if some of like maybe lower level, more abstract illusions might not be physically able to interact with you. And like, so the fact that like they're not like the mother's not interacting with the child or things like that could be indications that things are being manipulated around him. Long rant, but it just made me wonder, like, I wonder if there are tells in this game of when you are experiencing a delusion that has been like realized around you. Anyway, this was the reason why Bandit showed no reaction to the boy's mischief. Events such as those ones that do not present much trouble were becoming an everyday occurrence for him. Once he'd begun picking up on it, it made it difficult for him to stay of sound mind. Yeah, remember how it also talked about how like people in Shibuya are getting riled up, they're getting violent. Maybe like they're just filling the whole city with just annoyances to bother people to heighten their emotional states.
まあ、考えすぎだろうが、俺みたいな地味なおっさんに興味があるやつなんて そうそういねえだろうし。ただ、集団ストーカーってのは確かに存在するんだよな。
Gang stalking. That's where you get a group of people to stalk people, I'm guessing. An organized form of stalking. Despite what the name implies, it does not mean that a group of people simply follow a victim. Instead, it refers to repeated minor offenses, often various forms of harassment, perpetrated against an individual by several individuals. In some cases, the harassment is done with such utter sophistication, the victim has no way to perceive that many incidents as connected. Specific examples of this harassment may include a victim being repeatedly bumped into by various people they don't know, a car honking endlessly in front of the victim's house late at night, people the victim has never met before alluding to private information only the victim should know, etc. That one sounds terrifying. Even though each of these offenses are not a case to worry when viewed alone, they continue to occur several times a day over the course of several months. The victim will begin to deteriorate mentally. This eventually results in the victim growing terrified of everything around them, even the most mundane things that weren't actually intended to be part of the stalking effort, and no longer being able to trust anyone. However, there's a very fine line between actual gang stalking and someone suffering from a persecution complex, so identifying gang stalking as such must be done with extreme caution. Dang. Can you imagine that actually happening? I could see it. But you'd really have to get a coordinated group of people to work against like that. The closest I see is online harassment. You can whip up a crew online to do stuff. I know 4chan could be a hotbed for like essentially gang stalking, but online. There's and I imagine there's stories of that happening in person. The most I hear about are things like content creators getting stalked, but again, that's usually not coordinated efforts. It's just a lot of individual stalkers, and it's like just so it becomes a constant harassment type thing, but inadvertently it's gang stalking. That's an interesting. I've never heard that phrase before. I've never even considered it before, but that sounds horrible.
普通のストーカー行為とは何が違うんですか？
被害を受けてる側からすると、相手の意図や目的、正体すら全くわかんねえんだ。ただ、誰かに行く先々で毎日のように様々な嫌がらせを受けていると感じる。
Yeah, and it's hard to parse that. Even if you try to explain that to somebody, most likely they just assume you're being paranoid.
集団ストーカーってのはそういうもんだ。
ただの考えすぎっていう可能性は？
十分にあり得るだろうな。脅迫観念と紙一重だ。
Yeah.
俺の場合はそうでもなさそうなんだけどな。ここ数日は相手もかなり直接的な手段に出てきてやがる。
と言いますと？
手を引けって脅迫する匿名の電話が何度かかかってきてな。
Oh, I don't remember that happening. For some reason, Band laughed as he told her that. Yua, however, was frightened and wrapped her arm around herself in an attempt to bring her comfort.
それ、大丈夫なんですか？
まあ、デカにはよくあることさ。
Upon saying that, Ban immediately stiffened his expression and looked at Yua.
ユアちゃんは最近そんなようなことはないかい？
はい。ないと思います。
身の回りでちょっとでも違和感を覚えることがあったらすぐにおじさんに言ってくれ。
Yeah, that's fair.
ユアちゃんの身の安全を守るのは警察の仕事だからな。
はい。
Having listened to his words, Yua realized she was involved in something far more dangerous than she could have imagined. Tell me about it.
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
You are a delusionary existence. Wait. Okay. This is Rimi talking. And if that's the case, then the Shogun is the real Taku. He never left the hospital ages ago. But he created a delusion of himself and maybe gave it what's it called when you like make it manifest it into reality? He makes it realized. So, an alternate version that was never real. Her voice was a whisper. Rimi said something nonsensical. Ignoring what she'd said, I glanced at the various houses around me. In this place, well rooted in my memories, in this place I couldn't seem to recognize. Houses that should have been there were nowhere to be seen. Houses that shouldn't have been there were all I could see. The gap, the disparity between what I knew in my memories and the real scenery surrounding me was getting wider and wider.
ずれてなんかない。
Yelling those thoughts aloud, I desperately denied the despair welling up in my heart. Yeah, there wasn't any gap, not in the slightest. I'd just taken a wrong turn. This wasn't the right street. It was just a misunderstanding on my part. There was nothing wrong with the world. To think otherwise would be ridiculous. Stumbling my way back down the street I'd come from, I burst into the neighborhood alleyway. But just as I feared, between my memories of what I actually saw and something felt out of place. I realized that my entire body was soaked in sweat. My eyes refused to focus and my feet didn't feel well secured to the ground. All those feelings together hit me with an intense wave of nausea.
なんでだよ。ここに僕の家があるのは間違いないんだ。僕はいつもここから小学校にも中学校にも通ってたんだ。小学校にはナナミと手をつないで登校してたし、中学は自転車で。
どこの中学校？
Rimi, who had been following me, quietly asked a simple question.
どこって？
なんていう学校？
Uh-oh.
そんなの決まってるじゃないか。地元の。
Uh-oh. It's,
あれ。
Uh-oh. Oh, no. I couldn't remember. I'd gotten to middle school. I had clear memories of it, but I couldn't remember any of the fine details. It was as if some intense haze was covering my mind. The name of my middle school, which class I'd been a part of, or even the name of my homeroom teacher. No specific names came to me.
そんなはずないんだ。ただ、忘れてるだけで。
タク、聞いて。あなたの記憶にあるのは、この場所に家がある、じゃなくて、この場所に家があるはずっていう思い込み。
Right.
そうでしょ。
Right. My sanity was hanging on by a thread. I'm right there with you, buddy.
だって僕はここに来るまでの道は覚えてるんだぞ。おかしいじゃないか。
それは作られた記憶だから。
Stop making that face. Ruby's eyes were pointed straight at the ground and she looked terribly sad. Without looking up at me, she just continued saying the most confusing, nonsensical things. Things that, once again, I didn't understand. Things that were impossible to understand, so I stopped trying.
タクは中学には通ってないの。
わかったぞ。これドッキリでしょ。そうなんでしょ。きっとあれだ。そう、リミとナナミが実は知り合いとかで僕を二人して騙そうとしてるんじゃ。なんだ。そうか。
Oh boy. Oh boy. I tried my best to laugh it off, but Rimi didn't even so much as chuckle.
ごめん。私、これからあなたを傷つけることを言わなくちゃ。
Oh, good. This one's gonna hurt, as opposed to all the other stuff.
タク、あなたはね。
You are not real.
本来、いちゃいけない存在なんだよ。
Holy crap. Why?
つくな。
She was just trying to deceive me. Rimi was my enemy, just like all the others.
貼り付けはリミの仕業だな。
If that was true, then what had happened at the crime scene when I first met her hadn't been a delusion. If the true culprit behind the NewGen wasn't the man I'd seen at the hospital TV earlier today, it was Rimi. She had been monitoring me the entire time. She knew I'd witnessed everything, so she refused to let me out of her sight. Also, I would never tell anyone what else I'd seen. That was the sole reason she'd bothered staying with me all this time.
君はあの時血まみれだった。だから君が犯人だ。
あれは、あなたの望んだ妄想。ギガロマニアックスの妄想はね、強すぎる場合、時に混じり合うの。
Oh, interesting. So, the crucifixion was a delusion that was manifested, and Rimi is a delusion that we manifested, and they kind of formed together.
妄想が、シンクロするんだ。
Calmly, as though she was talking to herself, Rimi spoke. And yet her composure only served to piss me off even more. She's giving you answers, dude, listen! No. We're not going to delude ourselves here.
少なくともあの時、あの場所では4つの妄想がシンクロしてた。
At least 4.
タクと
Ours,
私と
hers,
ニュージェネの犯人と
NewGen culprits, and...
信じるもんか。
Before she could continue, I cut her off. I then covered my ears. I closed my eyes.
これは妄想だ。そうだよ、妄想なんだ。いつもしているみたいな。
No, wait, don't do that. If you push too hard, you might actually make it all unreal.
妄想はしないで。
Please don't have any more delusions. She spoke in a quiet yet serious, imperative tone. I gulped.
でないと私、タクを消さなくちゃいけなくなる。
Why?
殺すの？
A chill ran down my spine. My perception of Rimi, the girl I thought I would save me, was rapidly spiraling. Now she was turning into someone completely unrecognizable to me.
殺すんだな。やっぱり君が殺人犯なんだ。
So why does she look so... Biting her lip as she fought back her tears, hanging her head so low as could be, it all made me so hesitant to accuse her of anything. Tell me it's all a lie. Tell me it's all a prank so we can just laugh it off. If you do, we can go back to how it used to be between us. I want to go back.
だったら僕は何なの？
ギガロマニアックスの妄想によって作られた人間かな。
But he seems so tangible. That's the thing that's really scary. If that's true, why is he so real?
バカらしい。
And why can he influence the world himself? Like, why is he able to cause delusions? If he's a delusion himself, how can a delusion make delusions? That seems utterly horrifying.
僕にはちゃんと記憶があるんだ。中学の頃の細かい記憶は思い出せないけど、忘れちゃっただけで。
あなたが生まれたのは1年半前なの。
Oh my gosh. A year and a half ago? That would have been when I just started high school.
だったら僕は1歳半の赤ん坊っていうことじゃないか。バブ言ってなくちゃ。おかしい。
タクは生まれた瞬間からタクだった。
君がその目で見たって言いたいの？確かに僕らは1年半前から友達だったらしいね。僕は覚えてないけど。
私とあなたが会ったのは1ヶ月前。貼り付けの現場。
So that was the first time we met you. But then why did you introduce yourself as our lifelong friend?
私はもともと水明の生徒じゃないから。
Okay, Rimi's complete utter schizo, just like all the others. No, not just schizo, super schizo. She was a tier not even Senna or Ayase could hope to match.
誰が僕を妄想したの？言ってみてよ。
西条匠くんだよ。
Just name drop right there.
はい、
Boom.
アウト。僕が妄想なんでしょ？その僕が妄想して僕を作ったって矛盾してるじゃないか。はい、論破終了。それとも君の妄想、君が勝手に作り出した君だけの脳内設定なんでしょ？僕をそれに巻き込まないでよ。
Yeah, so here's the downside to this type of storyline is like, what is real? What even matters? At this point, like that's one thing, the one gripe I have with this, I love it. I do like this story, but the one gripe I have is at this point, the game can just do whatever it wants and just chuck it up to a delusion, right? I really hope that they have some kind of like consistency behind the scenes so that it won't end up being like that. But it feels like they've set up a stage where they can literally Deus Ex Machina anything they could want and just say, oh, it's delusions. You know, like it just makes it too easy. And like, I can't understand, like at this point, the scale and the power is just insane. The stakes, I don't even know. Heck, who is real? Hey, maybe everything's a delusion. We don't know that.
私だってタクには知ってほしくなかった。ここにも来てほしくなかった。もっと強く引き止めればよかったね。
Then gathering her resolve, Rimi raised her head, looked straight at me. Her eyes glimmered with sincerity. I didn't seem like she was lying. She felt entirely genuine.
でも、ここまで来たら、本当のことを知ってもらった方がいいと思う。
Oh, baby. But it wasn't the truth. It was all a lie. It had to be. Otherwise, my last thread of sanity would snap. Besides, who would ever believe someone who suddenly decided to hit them with, oh yeah, bedubs, you're a delusion.
あなたの行動が他の人の命を削っていくんだって知ってもらった方が。
Someone else's life?
そうだななみは僕が妄想だったら、僕と血が繋がってるナナミも両親も妄想ってこと？そんなの無茶苦茶。
ナナちゃんはいるよ。
From the way Rimi talked about her, it was almost as if she knew her.
ナナミを誘拐したのは君なの。
似たようなものかもね。
Oh, cool. That's cool to hear.
私はタクを守ることに気を取られすぎて、ナナちゃんが狙われる可能性を考えてなかった。私は誘拐犯のこと知ってる。
She really was a demon girl. I was right. I'd always been right. Rimi was the only one I'd wanted to be by my side, and even though I'd always believed that, there had always been more than enough reason to doubt her. I agree, honestly. I was saying that for a while. I was like, I like Rimi as a character, but like, I was like, there's no way she's trustworthy. Like, even the game like showed us that she was kind of in with Shogun, aka apparently Taku real? I don't know. What do we call him? And yet, even so, I feigned ignorance. I simply trusted that she'd kept her promise and stayed by my side. But despite all that, and just like Yua, Rimi was...
君も僕を裏切るんだね。
That's not the take she wanted to hear.
そうだね。私はタクを裏切った。隠し事をたくさんしてた。ごめんね。私のこと恨んでいいよ。
謝られたって。僕は信じない。信じられない。
Despite my words, it was impossible for me to prove that I was real. All the supernatural things I'd seen up till now flashed through my mind, and that's when I knew I couldn't just laugh off her words as some insane asshole. As I thought about that, Rimi slowly began to approach me, and then embraced me. Taken completely by surprise, I surrendered myself to her. I could feel her warmth. She had saved me. She had saved my soul. She had taught me nothing but kindness. But now, despite being at the center of her embrace, her warmth could not have felt more distant.
そろそろ行かなきゃ。
行くって、どこへ？
ナナちゃんをさらった誘拐犯のところ。決着つけなくちゃいけないの。
Oh boy.
ナナちゃんのことも他のこともこのままだとタクも守りきれないし。
そんなの無責任だ。僕にここまでひどいこと言っておいて逃げるの。
Rimi started inching away from me, one step, then another. Slowly she distanced herself.
戻ってくるからタクは部屋にいて。そしたらまた一緒にいろいろ楽しいお話ししよう。
Oh, it feels so
あなた
empty.
はあそこにいてもいいんだよ。
God, it feels like it's such a lie. Such a gentle tone. Even though she had said all the cruel things, why was she still being so nice to me?
でも一つだけ約束。もう妄想はしない。ね。タクの妄想力はとっても強いから、妄想すればするほど、本物のあなたの命が削られていっちゃうんだ。
Oh, interesting. The more delusions you have, the more the lifespan of the real you gets whittled away.
何を？
So there is a consequence to it. Interesting. I wonder if that actually will translate in the story, or if that's just like a thing.
それじゃあ、また明日。石。
Rimi struck a pose, saluting me with the most unusual smile on her face. It could not have been more forced. And only a moment later, from her eyes, quiet tears began to fall. Rimi frantically turned her back to me, and as she shoulder started to tremble, she ran away. And I, having been left behind in a stupor, sank helplessly to my knees. Alright. So I have some thoughts here. So, with this new information, I'm going to make some guesses. Taku in the hospital, aka Shogun, is a real person. The real one, and he manifested as a gigalomaniac pretty early in life. He was put under observation, experimented with, used delusions, but the use of delusions accelerated his lifespan. Eventually, he was retired from the project when they developed the NOAH 2, which was able to basically do what he was doing without involving a person. But he also became a lot stronger, probably a lot stronger than the organization realizes. So while he's in the hospital, he's able to start manifesting these really powerful delusions that kind of surpass everything else, right? One of them is that as he's gotten older and has basically like not been able to have a normal life, he forces the delusion of himself to manifest. After practicing, he makes like a realized delusion of himself as the high schooler, being able to attend high school in ways that he never did himself. Granted, he isn't the most balanced of people, but he manifests. The delusion becomes real. It has false memories and false life built into it to make it feel human and to believe itself to be human. But because it's a delusion of one of the strongest gigalomaniacs in the world, he's also a gigalomaniac and can manifest delusions. But because he's a delusion, those manifestations are even stronger than they should be. They are because they talked about too, how they said making delusions become realized required a D-sword, which we were able to do without. That's because we ourselves are likely a D-sword, if you think about it. So if this Taku, the Taku we've been playing as, is a manifestation that is on equivalent level, if not stronger than a regular D-sword, he's then manifesting powers through himself that doesn't require a D-sword at all, that doesn't require an awakening. But they're random, sporadic, and inconsistent. I think when Taku real, old man Taku, realized that this manifestation delusion has taken up a life of its own, and it can also create its own delusions, maybe he saw it as an out. Maybe that Taku has decided that the rest of his life isn't really worth going for, so instead, he'll encourage and train this Taku up to have the power that he knows it has, at the expense of his own real life, with the idea that he'll be able to live on in an existence that should be able to be independent of him. And maybe that's why he tried to push him to take it to D-sword so that he could fully manifest his powers. But as soon as he starts doing that, it's going to accelerate even faster Taku's real death. That's what I'm guessing is probably going on here. Now that Taku is also very, sociopathic? Psychopathic? Clearly willing to hurt others to bring about his own ends and own means. But maybe it's not as simple as oh, he's a crazy person. Maybe he knows what Nozomi's up to and knows what they're about to try and do. And so he's crafting a way to maybe stop it because they used him up. And once he was up, he was discarded. So I could imagine him resenting them for that. So that's kind of my wild, off-the-cuff thinking at the minute of where, based on the information we just had, what it might mean.
本物の僕ってなんだよ。僕は偽物じゃない。
All color vanished from the world. All hope I'd once had was gone. My very existence had been denied. There was no meaning in me being here. Not even my death held any meaning. Rimi had left me, leaving behind a meaningless husk. She was my enemy, she had deceived me. And now, having said her piece, she had probably lost her final remaining reason to be with me.
戻ってくるはずない。
Rimi had abandoned me, but of course she had. I was the delusionary existence, according to her, a monster. Forget it, I didn't care anymore. With no willpower to even stand up, I just stayed there, still unable to organize my thoughts, incapable of crying due to the sheer shock. The twilight wind robbed me of all warmth, and that very little remained of Rimi's faded completely. As I looked up at the sky for no particular reason, I gazed at the sunset, a sunset that had almost completely eroded by the dark of night. Dang.
これが新作？またへんてこね。
Alright, we're going to stop here Feel like that's a good place to end. Whoo, boy. That's some bombshells. Holy crap. This guy they just ripped the lid off of that one. It's like, oh, by the way, you're not real. Oh, okay. Explains a lot. And it's like, we can't even like use like, oh, we apparently have all these friends that like know us, right? It's like, no, of course you would, because when we've seen the delusions manifest, people just like their minds adjusted to its existence as if it had always been there. Heck, when we were created as a delusion, maybe we were intentionally created with Rimi as a friend and with what's his name as another friend. Like, we were given friends from the start, knowing that it would probably be a struggle. It's interesting. Besides the whole like they can kind of do whatever they want problem, everything else has been really well thought out, which is why I have hope. I have hope that it's not going to end up feeling like it's just a whatever we want to happen happens type of story. It's more of it's going to have pacing, it's going to have boundaries, it's going to have rules that it does actually follow, and that's going to be fun to learn. I feel like I already did a lot of my theory crafting in the episode, so I'm going to probably just wrap up here and just talk about how one thing I think is interesting is that Nanami was talking to us like we were her brother, right? So was Nanami part of the delusion? Or is she real and interacting with us, but maybe now that delusion's been shattered and so she wouldn't recognize us? Maybe that would, if we ended up approaching her, would she not even know who we were? In fact, she might even be upset if like whom she probably assumed her brother like long since died. Maybe she would be very upset at us for thinking that. It's interesting. I really got to know. I hope that we do get to see him interact with her in the future. I want to see what that manifests like. But again, we'll just have to see. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for being a part of the channel, for joining me on this wonderful journey, and for being a part of this great series. It's nice to be back on it. I feel like I took a break from it, even though I really didn't, but it feels like I have. And that was a lot. So I'm going to go and kind of chew on that for a while, and I'm going to be ready for the next week. But now it feels like from this point on, Rimi is saying, like, don't use delusions anymore. So I wonder, is that enough motivation for me to not do it? I wonder what the consequences will be. I'll have to see. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel. And thank you so much for joining me for Chaos Head. Looking forward to seeing what you thought of this episode. Obviously, no spoilers, please. Keep it real, but I know that there's a lot of information that now you can talk about, so just be careful not to overshare an accident. But yeah, very cool. Very excited to hear what you say about this one. But anyway, also, thank you to the patrons and members. Your direct support means the world to me. I hope I can continue to be worthy of you. We've had a few new people join up. Again, if you're listening to this and you've recently joined a membership on YouTube, YouTube isn't great about letting me know when someone new signs up. Like at least Patreon, like I get like an email every time, so I know immediately. YouTube doesn't really do that. So I've added your names as they appear on YouTube to the like end credits, like here on the channel. You should be able to see it. If you want your name to appear something different, and if you haven't accessed the Discord, please make sure you reach out to me directly. The Discord's really the best place to do that. There's a link in the description. And then like if you can confirm like your identity through the YouTube side of things, like we can kind of like do a back and forth there, and I can give you access to like the patron and member specific like sections where you can help me select some of the new titles that we might play on Fridays and Tuesdays in the future. So like definitely don't like give that up, because I feel like that's something that would be really cool for for us to showcase. But anyway, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And until next video, watching me up to see me in next. I'll see you there.